Hello, I'm John with Roadkill Incorporated, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about replacing a keyboard in a Unibody MacBook laptop. This is a 13-inch MacBook Pro. I believe the procedure is probably pretty similar in 15 and 17-inch Unibody MacBooks, although I have not tried it in those models. First off, I'd like to say that I would not recommend doing this. It's a fairly intensive very intensive procedure. Lots of pieces. Just not a very good way to spend a Saturday. Apple, I believe, will tell you that the keyboard and the top case, the Unibody top case, are one piece, and that they are not to be taken apart. I've found otherwise, that you can disassemble the keyboard from the Unibody top case. I was able to locate a replacement keyboard assembly separate from the top case on eBay for about $50, whereas the whole thing, the whole Unibody piece with keyboard, costs about $250, $300 if you can even find it. So anyway, like I said, very difficult procedure, but it can be done. I just found some interesting things out doing this myself, so I wanted to do this video in order to share the knowledge. So anyway, here is the underside of the 13-inch MacBook Pro. Obviously, it's already been mostly disassembled. Optical drive is out, fan is out, logic board is out. That goes right there, obviously. I love the design of the Unibody MacBooks for the most part. Very accessible, just pop the back off. To get the logic board out, requires about 5 minutes. It's just very simple, very well designed, very elegantly designed. So anyway, this is the speaker, hard drive, and battery are obviously still here. Once the logic board is out and you have this here, basically what is left is the keyboard, and obviously I've already taken it out, so I'm just kind of putting it there so you can see how it's sort of rested. And then on top of the keyboard was are 2 layers of the keyboard illumination. There is this this piece here, kind of an interesting piece of plastic, and then on top of that there is this black sheet, and this actually has the little connector that flips up around and plugs into the logic board to control the illumination. So anyway, to get the keyboard onto the Unibody top case requires, I don't know how well you can see it, but there are about 50 little tiny holes, and there are screws that go into those holes. They're the smallest screws I've ever worked with. If you can see them here, they look like poppy seeds on a poppy seed muffin. They're just absolutely the tiniest things. I can't even really focus on them. But there's just sort of a grid of about 50 holes that that firmly put the keyboard onto the top case enclosure. So it's fairly agonizing to get all of those screws out. So there is that. Then there is the illuminated. There are the illuminated keyboard pieces which go on top there, and then once those are in place, then you put the logic board, the optical drive, and everything on top of that. So that's kind of the basis of removing the keyboard. I'm not really looking forward to putting that back in, but I will do that once my replacement comes in. Things I wanted to talk about. I was fascinated to realize that the power button is actually, which goes in the corner there, is actually connected to the keyboard, is actually part of the keyboard. I have to say, I think it's kind of a silly design to do that, because if you pour water on the keyboard and fry the keyboard, you are potentially also killing the power button. That is actually how I began this experiment. I didn't pour the water on the keyboard, but I got a machine that had happened to, and long story short, I came to the realization that the machine was good, but that the keyboard was bad, or that for whatever reason stuff had gotten fried inside the electronics here to the extent that hitting the power button did not start the computer up. So it seems silly to me to design it that way. I don't know. Every design has, you know, some quirks with it. But anyway, that's what led me onto the experiment to remove the keyboard, which is what has been done here. So the main reason I wanted to create this video, though, was to show you kind of a trick. If you get a unibody machine, there's really not that much that can be done in the way of repair. You can replace the DC in, which really doesn't typically make a difference. They generally, you know, do not go bad unless, you know, liquid is poured directly on them. You can replace the memory. You can reset the, you know, various resets, the SMC and the things like that. But there's really not a lot you can do. But one way that you can test to see whether the power button and the keyboard situation is bad is by jumping the power on the logic board. And this was pretty interesting to figure out. If you look right here, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but just right there, at the tip of my finger, see if I can focus this on my, oh, look at that. Focused it pretty well on my iPhone. Right there at the tip of my finger, there are two little round pieces of metal. And if you take tweezers or you know, a paper clip, just some long piece of metal, and touch those to those little round surfaces, to basically connect them with metal, what that does is it jumps the power on the computer and starts the power up without this button. So you can see the the red liquid sensor there. So anyway, that is sort of a magic trick that is very, very valuable in repairing these machines, because if the keyboard is dead from liquid damage, as it often is, and therefore the power button likely isn't working, then you need a means of jumping these computers to figure out if the board is good. So again, right here, there's these two connectors. Of course, I can't remember exactly what the connectors are, but right there you've got the two little metal circles, two little solder points. And you know, it takes a little bit of going around there. Make sure you touch the right two, but eventually you'll get it and the machine will start up if it is a good board. This machine did turn out to be good, so that proved to be a useful test, and I was able to conclude after, you know, sort of jump starting the logic board, that it was in fact the keyboard that was bad. So anyway, long story short, just wanted to sort of share my story in terms of that. Again, it is possible to buy a $50 keyboard, not the illuminated keyboard part, that doesn't come with it for the 50 bucks. But on eBay I was able to find this piece basically for $50. So it saves you $250 over buying the entire assembly, the entire top case assembly. So you're able to do that, pay 50 bucks for that, and you're able to test to see if you actually need a replacement keyboard and power button by jumping the logic board, of course, while it's in the computer, and everything's together. Final note, sometimes if the keyboard is bad, then having it plugged into the logic board while you try to jump the logic board will not work. So try disconnecting the keyboard and then jumping the logic board with the keyboard disconnected. That was something I discovered too. So anyway, I've got to end this video. We're just about to the 10-minute mark. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful. Again, this is John with Roadkill Incorporated. Talk to you later.